Ever feel like family values are, like, constantly under attack these days? Well, buckle up, because today we're taking a trip back in time to, get this, ancient Judah.
Okay.
To uncover a story that might just completely change how you see those modern family values debates.
It's amazing how history can sometimes, give us a fresh perspective on the challenges we face today.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
We're looking at this book, The Lineage of Elijah by Betzy Córdoba.
Okay.
Specifically chapter 1, Restoring the Legacy.
Right.
And Córdoba starts off with this, really thought-provoking argument about how the family unit is kind of in a, precarious position these days. And she uses this story of King Hezekiah to illustrate her point.
Yeah. Córdoba really dives deep into how Hezekiah, widely considered to be a righteous leader,
Right.
makes this critical error.
Yeah.
One with consequences that went way beyond his own time, even.
Okay, so for anyone who maybe needs a little biblical history refresh, Hezekiah was this king who gets hit with life-threatening illness.
Right.
And then the prophet Isaiah shows up with a message from God. And it's not exactly, the best news.
Not exactly a get-well-soon card, no.
Not even close.
Isaiah tells Hezekiah, basically, get your house in order because, your time is coming to an end.
Right. Heavy stuff.
But Córdoba points out that house doesn't just mean, Hezekiah's personal life.
Right.
It's symbolic of his leadership, his role as, a father, a patriarch. The well-being of the whole kingdom of Judah is on his shoulders.
His legacy, the weight of that. But then, and this is where it gets really interesting, Hezekiah begs for more time. And gets a 15-year extension. You'd think he'd spend that time, I don't know, being the best possible king ever.
Yeah.
But Córdoba suggests that, things didn't exactly go according to plan, did they?
They did not. Hezekiah falls into this trap. He gets drawn in by what Córdoba calls, quote-unquote, the letters from Babylon.
Okay, so this is where I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Hezekiah shows these Babylonian envoys, everything.
Oh, no.
The royal treasury, the fortified cities, even his arsenal.
No way.
I mean, come on, that's practically an invitation for espionage.
It's true. His actions were a major security risk. But what's interesting is that Córdoba uses this to symbolize something even deeper than just physical vulnerability.
Oh.
She's saying that by revealing all of this, showing off his kingdom's material wealth, Hezekiah was essentially surrendering his kingdom's soul, its values, its identity to this foreign power. It's like he exposed his kingdom's heart.
It's like he's welcoming Babylon with open arms, but instead of an army, it's ideas that come flooding in, and not necessarily good ones for Judah, right?
Right. And this whole thing with Hezekiah, it's like a lead-in to what Córdoba sees happening today. She's arguing that we're facing our own letters from Babylon. Ideas and ideologies that, they might be presented as progress and all, but they might actually be chipping away at the family structure.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Give me some specifics.
Well, Córdoba throws out some pretty big examples, right?
Yeah.
She mentions things like the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Okay.
Feminism.
Right.
Figures like Betty Friedan, Alexandra Kollontai, even Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, those are all things that most people would consider to be positive changes, right?
Right.
So how do they fit into this whole, Babylonian influence argument?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not that Córdoba's saying these are inherently bad things, right?
Okay.
It's more like she's asking us to think about the unintended consequences. How even changes that seem positive on the surface, they can be manipulated or distorted in ways that weaken the family unit.
I see. So it's kind of it makes you think about that saying, it takes a village. It's that balance.
Yeah, the needs of the many versus the needs of the individual, right?
Right.
So take the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah.
Emphasizes individual rights, which, obviously a good thing in principle.
Right.
But Córdoba suggests that sometimes this focus on the individual, it can come at the expense of responsibilities to the family.
Interesting. So how does that play out though? Can you give me an example?
Well, think about someone like Betty Friedan, right? Her book, The Feminine Mystique, it challenged traditional gender roles, which sparked all these important conversations about the role of women in society. But Córdoba argues that it might have also inadvertently contributed to this devaluation of motherhood, of family life.
Yeah. And then there's Alexandra Kollontai. Now, she was around during the Russian Revolution.
Right.
And she had some pretty, let's say, strong opinions about family.
To put it mildly, Kollontai believed that, get this, children should be raised by the state.
Whoa.
Not by families.
Wow.
Now, obviously, totally different time and place, but Córdoba points to this as like an example of like a distrust of the family unit as like the basic building block of society. And it's a theme that she sees echoed in, some modern ideologies.
Okay, and then of course there's Margaret Sanger. Can't really talk about family planning without mentioning her.
Right.
Talk about a controversial figure.
Absolutely. Córdoba sees Sanger's work, advocating for birth control and all that, as part of this broader cultural shift, right? One that she argues has led to this separation of sex from procreation. And that, she says, has really profoundly changed how we view family and even the sanctity of life itself.
Uh-huh. It's so easy to look back at these historical figures, and judge their actions or their beliefs based on, what we think today. But it really makes you wonder, how are future generations going to view our choices?
Oh, 100%.
Our ideologies. It's kind of humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it speaks to the importance of what Córdoba's saying, right?
Right.
We have to really think about the potential consequences, even if they're way down the line of the ideas that we're embracing today.
Yeah, because if she's right, if we really are facing this new Babylonian influence, well, then we need to figure out what our letters from Babylon are, right? What are those ideas, those ideologies that we've maybe unknowingly embraced that could be harming our families, harming our values? So there's a lot to unpack here. But before we go any further, I keep thinking about this whole theme of the absent father that Córdoba keeps coming back to, with Hezekiah's failings as a father.
Yeah.
Why is that such a big deal to her? Why is that a cornerstone of her argument?
It's like this. Remember how Córdoba talks about those letters from Babylon, right?
Right.
Slowly chipping away at Judah's core values. She sees this absence of actively involved fathers as a direct result of those influences.
Oh, interesting.
Those Babylonian ideas, they were strategically targeting the foundation of the family structure. And they went right for the father first.
So it's bigger than just dads not being physically present, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole cultural shift that's happening.
Totally.
That's making fatherhood seem less important.
Exactly. And this is where she brings up that whole image of the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31.
Oh, right.
Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her.
Yeah.
She uses that to show how a strong, capable woman, she actually elevates her husband.
Right.
It makes him a more effective leader.
In the family.
And in the community.
Oh, I like that.
Right. So it's not about one being better or more important than the other. It's about partnership.
Right.
It's recognizing that a dad's leadership, it isn't threatened by a strong woman. It's actually strengthened by her.
They complement each other.
Exactly. They each have their own roles.
Right.
But they're working together towards a common goal.
And that goal is a healthy family.
Exactly. A healthy family.
Yeah.
And that's what Córdoba's highlighting here. And she believes that when that partnership breaks down, that's when things start to fall apart.
So that's kind of a bleak picture, right?
Yeah.
But there's hope, right? Córdoba doesn't leave us without any hope. She thinks we can fix this. We don't have to just sit here and watch families struggle. So what does she suggest we do? What can we do?
Well, she's a big believer in, knowledge is power. Understanding the history and the spiritual roots of the challenges we're facing today.
Okay.
Because this isn't just some modern problem, right? It's about recognizing that these patterns have been around for centuries.
Right.
We're not the first ones dealing with it.
It's about connecting the dots. Okay, so it's not enough to just recognize those Babylonian influences. We actually have to push back against them.
Exactly. We got to do something.
I love that example she uses of Esther.
Yes.
Bravely standing up for what's right, even when it was risky, even when it could have cost her everything.
Yes. And Córdoba, she's be a modern day Esther.
I love it.
Be clothed with the spirit of Elijah.
Yeah. It makes you want to grab your metaphorical sword and shield and go to battle. But what does that actually look like, for people listening? What can they do, in their own lives?
Well, Córdoba, she leaves us with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay, I'm ready.
She asks, if I'm right and we really are facing this new Babylonian influence today, what are our letters from Babylon? Like, what are the things that we've, maybe without realizing it, embraced that could be, like, quietly undermining our families,
Ooh, that's good.
undermining our values?
That's a good question to think about. That's something to, like, really sit with. And it's not about, pointing fingers or blaming anyone.
Right.
It's about, like, looking inward, and making conscious choices that build up our families, that build up our communities.
Absolutely. And recognizing that, like, family, it's precious.
Yeah.
It's fragile. It's something to be protected.
It's worth fighting for.
Exactly.
And sometimes those fights are uncomfortable, but we have to be willing to have those hard conversations,
Yeah.
We have to be willing to challenge our own assumptions. And ultimately, just fight for the kind of world where families can thrive.
Yes, 100%.
And on that note, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
But that question, those letters from Babylon, think about that. Think about what those might be in your own life. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.